Good evening, everyone. This is Mayur Parwekar. This lecture is about hierarchies and groups. The lecture basically delves into how to clean or prep your data before you actually start off working on your sheet. Okay, so I'm going to be working on a Tableau sheet which is completely raw. And in this sheet, what I'm going to do is try to create certain hierarchies or certain groups within the data such that the process of analyzing that sheet becomes much more easier. Okay, let me just share my screen to help you understand how we are going to be doing that and what is the sheet that we are going to be working with. Okay, now if all of you all can see the particular sheet in question, what I have is a superstore data, all right, which has got category, city, country, customer ID, market, order dates, all of these particular dimensions. And I've got the figures for them, which are my measures. All right. So what was the profit? What was the sales? What was the shipping cost? And at this point of time, if everyone can see, my sheet has a lot of marks and they are not basically, integrated with each other. All right. So it's a data which has still not been prepped. It has not been cleaned. And I don't know the relation between the data in question. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is going to try to create some sort of a relation with the data so that I can go from a holistic view to a granular view. Okay, so now if you all can have a look at this particular thing, the first thing that I'm going to do is try to find relation and create hierarchies between them. All right, so let me show you how and what you mean by the term hierarchy when I create the first one. Okay, now if you see over here, you've got something called as country, you've got something called as city, you've got something called as region, you've got something called as state. All right, and if everyone understands, these are nothing but geographical coordinates, right? So city, country, market, all of these are nothing but geographical coordinates, and they definitely have a hierarchy. In what sense? So if you can understand that the state is a subset of the country and the city is basically a subset of the state, right? So if I arrange this, then I would always arrange this as what, if you look at the data in this particular manner, where these are my countries. All right, so I place the country in the rows column. Then if you'll see over here, and if I take the state from here and place it over here, you'll see that there is a relation that exists over here, because now all of these states are a part of this particular country. All right, then if I look at the next particular relation, I can see that yes, my city is also a part of my state. So now if you can see, I can do an overview analysis of all the cities, of all the countries, or I can do a state-wise analysis, or I can do a city-wise analysis. Okay, let me just show you also something that we can get into the particular aspect of hierarchy. Have a look at the region aspect. Okay, so if you see over here, let me just get region over here and see what it says. All right, can you see over here, the region is basically telling you that look, there are so many countries out over here, but that also is a subset of Africa. Or if you see below, you may see that this is not just about Africa but all other countries also. Okay, so you got Canada over here, you've got the Caribbeans, you've got Central, you've got all of these particular things that are present as a part of the region. All right, so there is definitely a hierarchy that country falls within a particular region. Okay, so we can understand that the region is nothing but something called as continent, and multiple continents can lie within a particular market. All right, so I'm going to just add region over there. All right, let me just add region back again before the country, and let me show you what market we do. All right, so if you see the market, there should be a column called there should be a dimension called market, and have a look at what the market is going to do when I add it before the region. Okay, so can you see now, this is Asia Pacific region, and in Asia Pacific region you would have so many regions that would be there as a part of the Asia Pacific. So Oceania, then on the top you've got North Asia, then you have the Southeast Asia. All of these are a part of APAC region. All right, if I keep coming down, you now have the Europe and the Middle East. All right, so that is another region that you can see, and those will include these particular countries. All right, then you have, of course, another set of a market, which could be the US and Canada. So let me just go down to show you that there could be also a US and Canada. Yeah. Yeah. So if you see, all of these are now a part of the US, Canada. So your market lies at the top of the hierarchy. Then you've got the region, then you've got the country, you've got the state, and you've got the city, right? So I would always want to see this as a part of a folder and in a particular hierarchy that allows me to do a holistic analysis as well as a granular analysis. Okay, so let me show you how I'll arrange this in the same particular order. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is create a hierarchy. Okay, so how do you create a hierarchy? You can basically drop one on the other. Okay, you can drop one on the other and create a hierarchy over here in the data pane. Okay, so if you look over here, I have region over here, right? And my country is over here. Okay, so now I understand that my country is a subset of region, my state is a subset of country, and my city is a subset of state. Okay, so let's start off with the smallest hierarchy. I'm going to place the city on the state. Okay, so I'm going to place the city on the state, and let me show you what it is going to do. Okay, so I've got city and state. I'm going to name this hierarchy as location. Okay, let me call this as location. And now if you see that the state has come below the above the city. Okay, so they have been arranged in a hierarchy. Can you see this particular symbol? This symbol basically indicates that it's a part of the hierarchy. Okay, now above the state is nothing but the country. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this country above in the hierarchy over the state. Have a look over here. I'm going to take this and place it above. All right, so the moment a dark line appears, just place it out over there, and the country has come in over here. Okay, now I'm going to place region next to it. Okay, so on top of the country was my region, which we can see over here. All right, so region I'm picking and placing it above my country, and now all of these guys are in the hierarchy. Okay, and then I'm going to take my final one, which is my market. All right, and take this and drag it over the region. Okay, and now all of these guys, so you could have started off with, you know, region and then come down. Any of the ways is going to work. All right, so now what happens is you've created a hierarchy, which means now if you'll see, I'm just going to remove this from here. I'm removing all of this from here. I'll show you what happens exactly when I have created a hierarchy. Okay, so if you see over here, one, your data pane size has reduced because now all of these have got embedded in the location. Okay, so when I drop this down, I have all of these values. Okay, let me just take the location hierarchy and place it on the rows. It will immediately first show me what is highest in the hierarchy. So if you want a holistic view of all your 4 markets, you have the holistic view over here. Now you want to look at region wise analysis. All you need to do is, you know, press plus P, and now you are at the granularity of region. You want to go into more granular details, go to country. You want to go into more granular details, state, and then your city. All right, so what has been done is basically a hierarchy has been created for your location. Okay, you want to do only the market analysis, all you need to do is just do this minus, and they will again embed back over here. Okay, so this is one hierarchy that I've created, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to create small boxes similar for all my particular things. Okay, so I'm going to place this location in a folder called as location. Okay, so how do I create a folder? So the first thing before you create a folder is you need to drop down this, okay, this drop down arrow, and check first of all if group by folder has been checked or not. Okay, if it is group by data source table, which means I'll just click over here and show it to you. If it is group by data source table, you will not be able to create groups itself. All right, so I'm trying to do create. Okay, and over here I don't see a folder anymore. Okay, in order to have a folder over here, I need to first do a group by folder. Okay, now if I try to create a folder, so I'm again going to do a right click. Okay, can you see now a create folder drop down menu has appeared. I'm going to click on that and name this as location. All right, press OK, and now I've got a folder called as location. Okay, so this is my first particular folder. Now my second particular folder, let's assume that I want to create some sort of customer demographics. Okay, So in the customer demographics, I could have my customer ID, I could have what was his order date, or what was the order ID, what was the priority of that order. All of these can go into the particulars of customer demographics. Okay. Similarly, who serviced that particular customer can also be a part of it. Okay. So now I understand that there is no hierarchy in this. All right. So customer ID, customer order date, if I put them in the same particular way that I did for the location, there would be no relation between them because of the fact that they are not a part of hierarchy. All right. So hierarchy could be between what? Yeah. So category, if I place over here, and in the category, if I place subcategory over here from here and I place it over here, you will see that, okay, there is a subcategory that exists, which means that a hierarchy can exist between these two. However, between your customer ID and between your customer location, there is not going to be any hierarchy, or between the order ID and customer ID, there's no hierarchy. All right. So hierarchy means what? There exists a relationship between the top of it and the bottom of it. Okay. So now I'm going to create a customer demographics segment, which will include some fields such as your customer ID, order date, order ID, and let's say your product name and the sales customer name. So whosoever service that particular customer. Okay. So how do I do that? I'm going to first just right click over here on customer. So creating a folder. Okay. So create a over here. I don't have a folder, so I'm going to create a folder. Okay. And I'm going to name this as customer demographics. Okay. It's very important that you keep creating these boxes. Okay. Such that you always have directly an access to how your data should look like. Okay. When somebody approaches your sheet, which means that before a data analyst actually touches a sheet, you always make sure that he or her always preps the data first. There is a relationship that exists between it, and then you are going to make sure that you start off with the analysis. Okay. So now how do I add them in the same folder without actually creating a hierarchy? Have a look. So you've got customer ID over here. All right. Let me also push when that particular customer ordered something. All right. So I want the order date. So I'm going to take this and drop it over here. Can you see a blue line has appeared over that particular folder? So I'm just going to drop it over there, and you'll see that they are both now in the same folder. Okay. Then I'm going to take the order ID and then I'm going to place it over here. And now I have three particulars um, uh, in the folder, but without creating a group or without creating any sort of hierarchy. Okay. Then possibly what would I want? I would also want the product name or the product ID. I wouldn't need the product ID, but I would definitely need the order priority of this particular customer. So I'm going to place the order priority. Okay. And let me check if I have anything else. Yeah, I would need the product name of that particular, what has that particular person ordered, and what exactly was the what exactly was the customer who serviced him. So who exactly was the sales guy who actually broached the customer. All right. So I'm going to, let's say, even okay, let me not include that. I'll apply it in the supply chain logistics. Okay. So now if everyone can see, I have two folders and I have surprisingly reduced a lot on my data plane. So my data plane is much more cleaner because all customer demographics are over here. All my location logistics are over here. And now I'm going to create a supply chain logistics. Okay. So which means what are my sales field? When exactly did I ship it? What was the ship mode? Who exactly serviced the particular customer? What was the type of product ID for that particular thing? Okay. So let me just create one more folder, which is supply chain logistics. All right. So I'm just creating one more folder called as supply chain. Now, remember, why am I creating these folders? Because there would be a supply chain group which is monitoring the analytics for supply chain. There would be a product demographics group which is responsible for sending out who exactly is the next customer and how do we target them. So each team is looking at possibly a different set of data, right? So you need to make sure that they are working not just in cross demographics, but also in their own domain to find out is there any relation between X and Y that they are doing. Okay, so let me just call this as supply chain logistics and I'll press OK. And in the supply chain logistics, let me just push in who exactly was the sales customer for this particular product ID. Okay, what was the ship date? What was the order date is also something that I would require, but that's not there. All right, so how do I get that over here? I know that it was there in customer demographics. So what I can do is I can create a copy of that. All right, so let me just show you how to create a copy. All right, so order date, I'm going to create a duplicate over here and I'm going to use it over here and rename it. All right, so if you see over here, I right click order date, I duplicate it, and I'm going to rename this order date as, let's say, order date for supply chain logistics. All right, so let me just put it as SPL. Okay, so now I have this particular order date, and if everyone realizes, because I created a duplicate, I modified the original field. Now next to that order date SPL that I've created, there is an equal to sign, which means this is a modified field from your first original data. Okay, so now I'm going to take this order date SPL and I'm going to push this in my supply chain logistics. Okay, now I also wanted to know what was the ship mode. Okay, now who would use these particulars? If you realize that when Amazon would want to, possibly promote Amazon Prime to non-Prime customers, they would always be looking at this data key. Is the particular person using Amazon Prime? If not, then the customer demographics may be possibly passed to that particular department, that you need to do some sort of marketing to this particular customer so that he or she buys Amazon Prime. All right, so they are looking also at these logistics also to understand that this person ordered something on this particular date. So I had his or her order date and I had my delivery date, let's say. Okay, so the difference between the 2 days would give me how much delay my supply chain logistics are causing, and if I have to improve on anything, then I can improve it by looking at this particular data. Okay, so that is nothing but what your supply chain logistics is. Okay, now if you see over here, I have reduced the data further and now I'm left with only these particular things, which is category, segment and subcategory. All right, so let me just push this in the particular dashboard and let me see if there exists a hierarchy between them. Are they some sort of related fields? Okay, so I'm pushing the category first and I see that, okay, I've got 3 categories: furniture, office supplies and technology. Then I've got segment over here. Let's try to push this over here. And I see, oh, okay, there is a consumer segment, there's a corporate segment and a home office segment, which definitely can be a part of furniture. Okay, let me also see the subcategory. Let me place it over here. And if you see that it is grouping it as consumer, corporate, home office, because this is the order in which you placed it, right? So you've got furniture, in which these are your segments and these are your subcategories. Now, if you realize, ideally, the segment to figure out should be, if let's say I would want to place this over here. Okay, you can see over here now that in my consumer segment, so I placed the segment at the first. Okay, so in my consumer segment, I've got furniture, office supplies and technology. And in furniture, I've got subcategories as these particulars. Okay, if at all you removed this from here and place this over here at the end, have a look that basically now the main category is furniture, office supplies and technology. Then you've got your subcategories and in that you've got your segments. Okay, so this depends on whether you want to do the analysis of the product category or the product segment. So if I was analyzing, if I was told that, let's have a look only at the corporate segment. Okay, so let's assume that I'm placing this at the start. Okay, so I'm giving importance to the corporate segment, which means that I want only to look at the corporate segment out of all of these. Okay, so I've got consumer, I've got corporate and home office. I want to look only at corporate. So what am I going to do? Along with this, I will just take the filter, I will just take the segment and push it out on the filter. When I place it on the filter, I've been told that, look, I want the analysis only with respect to corporate. So I'm just going to unclick this, press OK, and you should be able to see only the corporate categories. Now, if you want to put sales or whatsoever data, you should be able to see. So the moment I pushed in sales or a moment I pushed in profit, all right, you should be able to see different sort of results. All right, we'll come to all of these particular things, but the basic analysis could be, I have now the sales graphs along with what are the values. Okay, how do you get the values? By pressing this T. I now got a values for all my corporate segments. Okay, so I can just sort this and I will get what kind of sales I'm doing in each category. Okay, if similarly you wanted profit also to be shown over here, you can just drag this on color. So drag profit on color and you should be able to see over here in the right hand side, the dark indicates highest profit and red indicates losses. So in this particular thing, you can clearly make out that, okay, your bookcases are making a good decent profit also, and they're doing good sales also, but tables is not doing extremely well. Okay, so that is some way by which you can figure out that, okay, how do I incorporate sales and profit in the same particular graph? Okay, now just to understand, the reason why we were doing this was to basically understand hierarchy. All right, so I understand that if I remove this, so I'm just removing corporate segment from the filter so that now I have everything. But I now know that these definitely belong to a hierarchy, and let's call this as product category because all of this is related to the product. Okay, so how am I going to do a hierarchy on product category? Have a look. So my subcategory is a part of category. So I'm just going to take this and drop it on the subcategory. Okay, and this hierarchy, I'm going to name this as, let's say, product demographics. Okay, so now what I've got is nothing but these product demographics. I now want to add one more thing, which is the segment. Okay, and the segment is at the top of these two categories. So I'm going to take this and drop it over my category. Okay, so now I have my product demographics. So let me just remove this and you'll come to know the same particular graph. How will I use it with the hierarchy? All right, so removing it from here, have a look at what will be the change. Okay, so I've removed all of my particular elements and now I have product demographics. Let me place it in a particular folder. So I'm creating a folder called also as the product demographics. Okay, and now over here, if everyone can see, what has happened is basically my data pane, which was extremely large at the start, has automatically reduced to 4 folders, which carries all the information about what I wanted. Okay, so if you see over here, I have my supply chain logistics, I have my product demographics, I have my location, and I have my customer demographics, right? So we were just looking at the product demographics. Now, if you see, when I've created the hierarchy, I didn't need to keep adding this from the data pane or checking out is there any sort of relation between them. All I need to do is just place product demographics over here. And the first particular thing that will happen is you'll get the most holistic overview. Then for the granular details, you move into, let's say, the category. Then for the further granular details, you require the subcategory. So whomsoever the client, whatever he or she does ask you, whether you want, let's say just the category wise, give me the sales numbers and profit numbers, you can work with this granularity. Or if somebody tells you that, no, just give me the numbers on consumer, corporate and home office for the sales. Okay, all you need to do is, take the sales and just push it out over here and you should see the values out over here directly. Okay, So if everyone can understand what, when we are doing this particular analysis, before any analysis happens ever, the first thing that needs to be done by a data analyst is always making sure that your data is prepped and cleaned. Okay, so this is how a basic sheet which was completely without order has now been arranged. Okay, now if you see over here, there is this pin that you can see next to small supplies. Okay, this is called as grouping of data. So I'm going to also show you how do you group data. Okay, after so now that we've completed hierarchies and we understand how we can prep or clean the data, we are now going to move into how to create groups. Okay, so how do you create groups and why do you need groups? Now if you realize that when I'm talking about groups, let's assume that you are going through an Amazon website, or you want to shop for phones. Okay, and or you're looking for headphones, and you put these filters that I'm looking either for only iPhones, or I'm looking only for OnePlus phones or Samsung phones. So though there will always be a certain amount of cross selling, the moment you put certain amount of filters that I want only to look at OnePlus phones, at the back end a grouping of the OnePlus phones is created and sent out. In the same way, how you create groups is again an art, whether you do it from the data pane which is on the left hand side, or whether you're grouping that particular data on the dashboards. Okay, now when will you group the data in the data pane, and when will you group the data on the dashboard? So let me just show you these two particular things. Now if you see over here in my product demographics, so I'm going to first show you the grouping from the dashboard. Okay, so I'm going to show you the grouping from the dashboard. So let's have a look at this particular thing. If you see over here, a subcategory over here, I'm just going to place the subcategory over here, and I see that okay, these are so many things that I have. Okay, so my product category has all of these particular aspects. But let's say that I know internally that all of these come under one, all of these would come under one, and all of these would come under the third one. Okay, so let us assume that I know internally that they belong to some sort of so if you look at the category, they you can understand that they are basically related to all of these three only, right? But if these groups were not created, okay, then how do you create these sort of groups is what I'm going to show you. Okay, so if everyone realize, I'm going to create these groups in the subcategory, but instead of furniture, office supplies and technology, let me just name them as something else for your understanding. Okay, so I'm going to show you how to create groups first from the dashboard and then from the data pane, and then explain to you when exactly would you use the dashboard and when exactly would you use the data pane. Okay, now have a look. So I'm going to first take yeah, I'm going to first take just a minute, please. Yeah, so I'm going to first take this category and place it on the dashboard. Okay, now in the category, if you see that there is a subcategory, so I want to create a grouping over here somewhere. Okay, so instead of this three also, let's assume that I wanted to make only two groups for the subcategory. All right, so let me just remove this, and now I just have the subcategory in front of me, and I want to do a grouping of this for understanding certain sales. Okay, so let me first add a sales out of here, and I have a certain chart now which tells me that okay, this is what is the sales for so and so things. Okay, now how I actually group them. Okay, so let us assume that I wanted to create three groups. The first group was, let's say, X, the second group was Y, the second group, the third group is Z. Okay, now these groups that you want could be on the basis of anything that you're doing, which means that if I'm analyzing the sales performance of my investment managers, so how many product portfolios did that person sell? Or if I'm analyzing the sales performance, let's say, of my sales teams in a supermarket, and how each of the aisle is doing. So I can create groups of sales team A, sales team B, sales team C, and so on. Now, how do I group them? I can group them from two particular ways first on the dashboard. The first one is from these particular things that you see on the left hand side called as labels. Okay. And on the right hand side, you have got something called as marks. Okay. So all of these are called as marks. And all of these are nothing but labels. Please do not confuse labels with this labels that you see over here. Okay. This labels is just a subcategory of it. However, I'm talking about all of these elements called as labels. Okay. So now I'm going to show you grouping from the dashboard, and I'm going to group them into three random groups called X, Y, and Z. Okay. Now, how do I group them? I'm going to group them on the basis of, let's say, anything. So I'm just going to take first four. Okay. So I'm going to do a control click. Okay. So control click, control click, control click, and control click. And I'm going to right click over here and say group. Okay. The moment I do that, can you see that it added the sales of all of those four guys? And now it is showing me over here. So I can rename this, let's say, by doing an edit alias and call this as X. Okay, so this is my group X. So, or sales team X or product portfolio X, anything. Okay, so let's call this as product portfolio X. Okay. So can you see over here a sales value which corresponded to all the four sales combined has been generated over here. Okay. Now let me just take another something over here. Okay. So control click, control click, control click, and control click. And let's call this as group Y. Okay. So again, right click, group, and we are going to see that this again added all those four, and now it is giving me a combined sales value. Okay. I'm going to rename this as product portfolio Y. All right. And then let's assume that I've got these four. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. Right click, group, and let's call this edit alias and rename this as product portfolio Z. Okay. And then these 5, let me just group them and call them as product portfolio M. Okay, so now if you realize over here, I have done a grouping over here of all of them into categories of 4 or 5. Okay, and this basically has appeared. So can you see over here, this subcategory group 1 has automatically appeared over here. So if you realize, small supplies was created in a similar way, and I can call these as, so I'm just going to rename them by yeah. So let me call this as product portfolios. So you can directly use these groups for analysis, which means how would I do that? So out of this, if let's say I wanted to analyze only these two portfolios, so what I could do was directly take product portfolio to filters, and it would ask me. So this could be your sales team A, sales team B, sales team T, sales team D, any of those. All right. And I wanted to analyze only X and Y. So out goes this, out goes this, and I do OK over here, and you'll see that you're just analyzing these two. All right. So if everyone understands, this is nothing but creating a group from the dashboard itself. Okay. Now this is easy to do if you realize only when your data is small in nature. Okay. Because there were only these many products that you had, you could easily group them, right? A similar thing that I'm going to also show you is, so I'm going to do a control Z and come back to my original values. Okay. And show you how to group them from these visual marks. Have a look. So I'm doing a control Z so that I come back to my original values. And this is nothing but my original sheet. Okay. So this is my unsorted sheet. And now if let's say I wanted color indications that, there are again 5 groups, let's say, but I want them to be indicated in colors rather than aggregating the values. So what would I do? Let's assume that these 1, 2, 3, 4 belong to the same particular group, and I want to or let's assume that the first, third, fifth, seventh, something like that, are a part of the same group. Okay, I'll show you why it is needed. Okay, so have a look at this particular thing. So again, control click, then control click, control click, control click, and control click. Let's assume that this is forming group 1. Okay, so what am I going to do? Right click on them and do a group. Okay, now the moment I do that, if you see over here, these became blue and the others are changed into something called as other. Okay, now click anywhere outside and if you see, all of these have been grayscaled. Okay, now I want another group to be formed. Okay, so I'm going to of course rename them as again product portfolio A, B, C or whatsoever. Have a look at what I'm going to do now. So I want another group and click, click, click and control click over here, and let's take one more and I'm going to again group them, and now you'll see that a second group has appeared. Okay, so here you've got these as your group. Then again I want another group, let's say, so control click, control click, control click, control click, and right click on them, again group, and now this is of another color. And then I have, so always click outside after you finish that particular thing, and then again group. So 1, 2, 3, these are now a part of one group, and I'm going to group them together. Okay, now if you see, when I'm doing it from the marks, it did not aggregate it as to the prior one. Okay, so over here, when I'm doing the grouping by marks, I'm looking at rather that same data on the dashboard itself. I do not want it to be aggregated, but I want to look at it together. Okay, so if you realize that this, when I do this sorting, it always does a computed sort on the basis of highest to lowest, right? But always remember that a manual sort will always have a precedence over a computed sort. Okay, so what I can do is, all these red I know belong to the same particular group, so I can directly take this and arrange them next to each other. So here goes supplies next to my phones, machines and supplies. And if you see over here, now I can look at the percentage difference between phones and machines, or machines and supplies, or I can look at who's the rank first in these particular things. Similarly, I can also take all of these and place them together. So copiers and bookcases together, accessories then next to it, then I got art, which is also next to it, and I've got fasteners, which is also next to it. Okay, so now if you see, all of these guys are now in the same visualization group. Then I'm going to group all of these orange. So I'm going to take chairs, appliances, place it next to chairs, then this, then furnishings next to this, furnishings next to binders, and envelopes next to furnishings. Okay, so now if you see, the same sort has now been arranged as per whatever group you created, and now there is a manual precedence that is working over the computed sort. So now you can do any sort of calculations that you would want to do on these particulars, keeping all of them on your dashboard view. As opposed to that, if you realize that when we were doing it by labels, they were just aggregating the entire groups. Okay, so depending on what analysis you would want. Okay, so if you realize, instead of this, how would I break it into an easier one, was nothing but if I was doing the sales for, I was doing an analysis of a bakery, all right, and it had tea, coffee, you had bakery products like croissants and all of those, and possibly some sort of dry materials that you also sell out over there. So you could have an analysis of all of these separately, and you would want to see all of them together, okay, on the dashboard. As against that, you could also have something like you had some sort of a grouping, like you have tea and herbal tea, and then you've got coffee and extra strong coffee or decaf, all of those kind of things. But somebody does ask you on the fly that group all your teas together and group all your coffees together. Okay, so all you need to do is just combine all of them from the labels and you'll just get two things called as tea and coffee. All right, but if you want a granular comparison between them, which means the client asks that go ahead with a comparison at a granular scale, then you can always do this particular visual grouping to give the client a much more better perspective also. Okay, however, if you realize that dashboard visualization is only possible when the data that you're looking at is as small as this. Now imagine the same concept when I was talking to you about sales aisles, or how is each team doing on sales. If you realize, I'm just going to take this let's say sales customer over here. Let me just see where the sales, yeah, supply chain logistics. Uh, um, the salesperson is what we are looking for. Small supplies, subcategory, product category, location, customer ID. Yeah, it should be in the supply chain logistics. Okay, so if you see over here, I'm looking at my sales teams. All right, so if I wanted to do a performance analysis of my sales team, have a look at what would happen. So I'm just going to now remove this. Okay, I'm removing this just to show you that what would happen if at all I had an extremely huge number on the dashboard and if I was told to group it. Okay, so if you see the sales customer names, okay, which means the guys who serviced the particular client, I'm just going to place it over here on the sales customer and place the sales that these guys have brought in. Okay, so let me just put it over here, sum of sales. Okay, now if you see, can you see the amount of data that's there over here? It just doesn't make sense for me to do the grouping on the dashboard, right? Because there it's from A to possibly Z that you would have, these many people who are working in your organization. Just doesn't make sense ever to do such kind of grouping ever on your dashboard. Okay, so what's the better way to do it? You do it directly from the data pane. Okay, so have a look at how I'm going to do it. If you see over here in the supply chain logistics, I'm just going to do a right click over here. Okay, and I'm going to do a create group. Okay, so right click, create, and create group. And over here, what I can do is, so I have, all these is, let's assume that all of these I'm going to group them as sales team A. So I can just do a group over here and just call this as sales team A. All right. So all of them, the moment I do that, okay, so the moment I press enter, all of these guys are now for sales team A. Similarly, if I wanted to do for this, so all the B's together, and I would have my sales team B. All right, so group, and they're all going to be in sales team B. Okay, so all you need to do is rename them as sales team B, and so on. So if you realize that when you do that, this particular thing will be coming up as something like sales team performance. Okay, so I'm going to just name this as sales team performance. Okay, so you would have, x number of teams that are present. Okay, the moment you press OK, because of the fact that of course I've not created all the teams, it will show you when you place it on the particular dashboard, it will show you sales team A, sales team B, and then the whole other names because I've not grouped them right now. But if let me show you how that is going to appear. Let me just show that. Okay, so sales team performance, if you saw, one more group got created called as sales team performance with a pin next to it. Okay, if I place this over here, what you should see in some time is, yeah, can you see over here? Sorry. Okay, let me just directly push it over here, and in filters, let me find the sales team A. Okay, I think the sales team did not get created. Just a second. Oh yeah, it's got created over here. Sorry. So you have, no, this is a subcategory. I think the sales team performance. Yeah, it's got created over here. I'm not sure where the sales team A has gone. No, doesn't seem to be there. But what I can show you is just a second. Okay, so over here, instead of, so the grouping is basically done from here itself. All right, so I'm just going to do a Control Z to show this again to you. So let me remove the particular group in question. Okay, so the group is gone. You do a right click, you do a create group. Okay, and you just select the particular things and just group them by mentioning a sales team A. Okay. The moment you will create this for all of them, you will then see a particular thing called as, so I'm just gonna call this as performance. Okay. And I'm not created all of them, but I'm just grouping them just to show you how the others would be seen. Okay, so press OK and you've got a performance out of here. All right, so let me move it out from the group and you should see a performance over here. Okay, so when I take this performance and place it over here, at somewhere I should see a group called performance, and within that there should be a sales team A. So still doesn't seem to be there. Let me exclude. Okay, or let me just find it over here. Sales team. Yeah, can you see over here? A sales team A has got created. All right, so just press sales team A and press OK. And you should see only the people from sales team A. So let me just push in the sales over here. And this is your performance, only your sales team A ka performance. Okay, so I'm going to take this particular performance of sales team A and place it over here. Okay, so if you see over here, only sales team A ka performance came into picture. All right, so that is how you can create different groups from the data pane when the data is large, or you can create it from also your dashboards directly. Okay, so this is nothing but how to create hierarchies and groups. I'll see you next time on how to create combined charts and combinational access charts. Thank you.